Welcome back to Python for Biologists. Today we're going to look at how we can connect relational expressions to make a more compound or complex test, a true-false test. And in this example, I am going to introduce what we call the logical operators. Remember, the relational operators test two quantities to see if they're equal, greater than, less than, greater than or equal, less than or equal, or not equal. So we have that set of relational operators. We can combine those with what we call the logical operators, and those are the AND operation, the OR, and the NOT. So we're going to look at those through an example. In this example, we are going to find the largest of three input numbers. In a previous video, we looked at the if statement and how to find the larger of two. So now we're going to advance. We're going to find the largest of three input numbers. So to begin with, we are going to type in those three numbers, and we will store them in variables num1, num2, num3, just using our usual input operation and converting that to a type integer this time. I'm going to do several cases to show you how this can be solved, and I'm just going to print out to the screen each time which case that we're doing. So in the first case, we are going to find the largest number, and we're going to use what we call nested if statements. So the first example is not going to use those logical operators here. It's going to use some nested if statements. All right, so let's look at how we can do that example. And we'll start out with the usual if statement that you've seen already. If num1 is greater than num2, then we would print out, num1 is the larger of the two values. But now that we have 3, there's a num3 that we still have to be concerned about. Well, the way that we handle that is we put another if statement inside of this if statement. So that's why we call these the nested if statements. Okay, now I want to make sure my indentation is correct, so I'm going to backspace and then hit the tab key. So here's how this works. If num1 is larger than num2, then that means num1 could possibly be the largest of the three. But I haven't compared it with 3, so I have to have another if statement here. So if num1 is larger than num3, then I know definitely for sure that num1 is going to be the largest number, so I'll just print that out. And we'll put the print statement here. So here we have a nested if statement, and in order for num1 to be the largest of 3, then both of these have to be true. So num1, num1 could be 3 and num2 could be 1, but num3 could be 8. So we could pass this test, and then we would get to the inner part of the first if statement. Then we'd have to pass this test, and if we failed, then we do not print out this value here. So in order to validate num1 as the largest of 3, we have to have true for both of those if statements. That takes care of num1, but we also have two other possibilities that we have to test. It's also possible that num2 could be the largest of 3. So we have another nested if statement that will test that situation. Okay, if num2 is greater than num1, then we will go inside the first if statement and we'll test to see if num2 is greater than num3. Now, again, passing both of those if statements, then we would get num2 would be the largest number. And we need to do this one more time because, num3 could be the largest. So we have another nested if statement. So if I put this here, then we'll have the code that we need. And again, I want to make sure the indentation is correct on this. Copying and pasting can cause some extra spaces or tabs not to be there. So now hopefully that's correct. So here's one solution. Here's case number 1. And we will use a simple nested if statement with the greater than sign, the greater than relational operator in each one. Now let's run the program and let's see how this works. Here's the output window, and we have to type in the numbers according to these prompts. So for number 1, a variable num1, let's just enter 1. And for the second one, num2, we'll enter the number 2, make it easy. And then the third number will just be 3. So we have case number 1, and it detects, hey, 3 is the largest number. So that works. Let's run it again, and let's try a different input. So let's make the first number, maybe the largest one. So I'm going to stop the program, and then I'll run it again. And we'll bring over the output window, and let's type in 3 different numbers. So this time, let's make the first number the largest. So let's put a number like 8 for the first one. Second number, let's make that 4. And we'll do, the third number will be 2. So now the first number is the largest. So let's test that. And we get 8 is the largest number. Right? So in this case, num1 was the largest. So this if statement over here is the one that executed. So we printed out num1, which is the value 8, was the largest number. So you can see then that this is one way that we can solve the problem of finding the largest of 3 numbers. Well, that works just fine, and in programming, if you have a solution that produces the correct answer, then that is as good as any other. But there are shorter ways that we can write this. And in this example, I didn't use any of those logical operators that I told you up above that we'd go into. So let's use one of those, and this will be case number 2. So I'll paste the code in here, and we're going to do case number 2. We'll have the same job, find the largest number. We're going to use this AND logical operator this time. So I'll show you how it works. We can use AND to combine a couple of relational expressions. In fact, we can combine as many as we want like this. So here's the way it looks. We can write our if statement like this. So we are going to have if num1 is greater than num2. Right? So that's the first test that we have to do. But we can combine that using the AND logical operator with the second test that we need, num1 greater than num3. So this is equivalent to what we had up at the top. Okay, if num1 greater than num2, then we have a nested if. This is equivalent, and we can write it much shorter with just a single if statement if we write it this way, and we use the AND logical operator. Now, in order for this thing to evaluate to true, we have to have both of the relational expressions evaluating to true. So that means the AND operation, and it's sort of like a regular English sentence. If you want to do this and you want to do that, okay, then both of those have to be true in order for you to continue. For example, if today is Saturday and you want to go to a movie, then we'll go to a movie. But at any rate, when you have the AND logical operator, it combines 2 complete relational expressions, and they do have to be complete. Okay, you have to have a completely syntactically correct relational expression on both sides of that AND. So in order for this to be true, both sides have to be true. If one side is false, the whole thing's false. Okay, if the other side is false, the whole thing is false. And of course, if both of these evaluate to false, then the whole thing is false. So the only possible way that you can get beyond this, the only possible way that if statement can be true, is if both of the relational expressions evaluate to true. So in this case, if num1 really is the largest of 3, then this expression will be true. Then we can just go ahead and we can print out that num1 is the largest number. So I can copy that from up above and paste it in here. And that's all we'll need. Okay, again, I want to make sure I've got the indentation correct on this. So that takes care then of testing to see if num1 is the largest. Well, we still have to take care of the second number and the third number, so we need to do a similar if statement for those. So let's put that in here. So I'll copy from my notes and I'll paste into our code window, and hopefully it's going to be correctly indented. So now we have the whole thing. Case number 2, we're using the AND logical expression. So if num1 is greater than num2 and num1 is greater than num3, then that's true, and we print out num1 is the largest number. Similarly, if num2 is greater than num1 and it's also greater than num3, then num2 is the largest. We print out the value for num2. And obviously, if num3 is greater than num1 and num3 is greater than num2, then we print out num3 is the largest number. So here's another way that you can compose this test to find out the largest of 3 numbers, but we've written it a different way, and we can use this simple form of the if statement instead of having the nested if statements up above. So let's run the program again, and let's look at the output that we get from that. Okay, so I need to save it first. And then I'll bring over the output. And let's make number 2 the largest one this time. So we'll have to enter some values here. So let's say number 1 is 4, and let's make second number 8, and the third number 2. So it's going to detect in case number 1, that one works, still does, still works. And in case number 2, it also works. So here then is the alternate technique you can use to evaluate 3 numbers to see which one's the largest. And you can have the AND expression here. Now, one thing you can do if this, maybe you need some clarity as far as this is concerned, you can put parentheses around these relational parts if you want to, and that kind of separates it out from the AND. So it's okay to do that. And the order in which these things are evaluated is also important. Okay, we have to evaluate the expression here. We have to evaluate that one, and we have to also evaluate that one before we do the AND operation. So there's an order in which this is done. The relational expressions are evaluated first, and then we can compare them with the AND. So this is also syntactically correct, and it might help you in grouping these things to make sure that you know that the relational expressions are separate from the AND expression. Now, I'm not going to go into it with this example, but we can have as many ANDs here as you want to. Okay, so you can string out combinations of relational expressions with the AND logical operator, and you can have as many as you want to here. Okay, you know, if condition 1, and condition 2, and condition 3. So you can make this quite long. Now, that's case number 2. Let's look at yet another way that we can do the same problem. So here's another way that we can write the same thing. So this is going to be case number 3, and instead of doing separate if statements, we could also employ the else if clause and write the if statement in a different way. And I'm still going to use the AND operator for this example, but where I have the if statements, I'm going to replace 2 of them with the else if statement. So let's put the code here. And it didn't change very much, right? So instead of having 3 consecutive simple if statements, I have the beginning if, as you always need, followed by an else if, followed by an else if. So that's not much of a difference, but it does work. So that's another way that you could write this, and it illustrates the else if clause of the if statement. Well, we need to test it, so let's run the program yet again. And let's now try all 3 cases. First number, let's make it the first number is the smallest one this time. So let's do 2, and we'll do 4 for the second number, and we'll do 8 for the third number. And you can see now that all 3 cases give us the correct answer. There's case 1, okay, there's case number 2, and the third case also gives us the correct number. All right, so that's a third way that you could write a combination of if statements and relational and logical expressions in order to solve the problem. Moving on, now let's look at yet a 4th case, a 4th way that we could do this problem. All right, so in this instance, I'm going to modify that result that we just did one more time. So here, this is case number 4, and we're going to use the logical operator with the else clause. Okay, so we can use the else clause this time. So I'm going to copy, and from my notes again, I'll copy and I'll paste in the code for this one. So this one is also very similar. So looking at case number 3, we had the if, the else if, and the else if. And I'm replacing that last else if with just a simple else. Remember that when you have the else, there's no test over here. Okay, else is going to be, it'll come into play if everything above it is false. So in this case, if we have 3 numbers, okay, num1 could be the largest one, num2 could be the largest one. If neither num1 nor num2 happen to be the largest, then we know by default num3 will be the largest number. So we can just dispense with that last relational expression after the else if at the bottom and replace it with an else. Okay, again, just a different way you could write code in order to solve the problem. Now, we need to test every time, so let's run the program, and let's now enter three numbers, and let's test those. So enter the first number. The first number, I want to go 4. Let's make the second number the largest. It's 8 this time. And the third number, I'll make it 3. And then we should detect 8 in every case. And we do. All right, so you can see that each case we get the answer is 8, 8, 8. And the last one, case number 4, yeah, sure enough, 8's the largest number. So here you have 4 equivalent ways in order to find the largest of 3 numbers. Are you concerned about numbers that are equal? Well, what about those things? What if the numbers happen to be equal to each other? So let's look at a situation where we can test to see if the numbers are equal. So we can modify the examples from cases 3 and 4, and we can handle that. So let's paste the code in here. And no, I've just pasted that already. I want to paste something else. So let me go get the code. I'll copy it and I'll drop it over here. And I've kind of rewritten that last case where we had the else down here in case number 4. So here's case number 5. And we start out the same way. Okay, we have the if statement, and we have the else if here, we have the else if here, exactly as we had up there in case number 3. But if I want to allow for numbers that are equal, then I can throw in the else clause down here. So in this case, if we have separate values for num1, num2, and num3, then one of those statements will be true, and we'll print out which one is the largest. If they're all equal, then all of these if statements will result in false. So if they're equal to each other, they're false. Okay, that one's false. This one is false. In that case, then the only possibility is the numbers are equal. So we have our else clause that will catch that, and we'll print out that the numbers are equal. We could have done it a little differently. Of course, you could come up with different if statements there, but this is one that will work. And as always, there are many ways to write code to solve a problem. So let's now test this, but let's put in numbers that are equal. So we'll bring our code window back up, our output window back up, and let's put in numbers that are equal. Okay, so we'll do 4, 4, and 4. Now, let's look at the various cases that we have. Okay, case number 1, we had those nested if statements. Okay, nothing. Okay, it does not detect numbers that are equal. And if you look at this, you can easily see why, right? We're not testing for equal, we're just testing for greater than in every case. So we didn't check for numbers that are equal. Okay, case number 2. Okay, nothing comes out there either. And again, that's because we're just testing for specifically numbers that are larger than the others. So we use the greater than symbol. We don't use the equals at all, or we don't use the greater than or equal, which we could do. Okay, case number 3. Okay, same thing. We get nothing. Case number 4, we do get an output. Okay, case number 4 says 4 is the largest number. So why did we get that from case number 4? The reason is, in case number 4, this one turned out to be false, didn't it? Okay, num1 greater than num2, num1 greater than num3. Okay, that's false. Same thing for num2. And since we had the else clause that kicks in if everything above it is false, we print out num3, which the value is there is 4, is the largest number. So because of the else clause here, which is the catch-all, if everything above it is false, we do get an output. Right? So you can decide, well, it is the largest number, I guess, because all of them are equal to 4, but that probably isn't the output that you'd really like to see. Okay, case number 5, we print out the numbers, and we show that the numbers really are equal. So by structuring our if statement the way it's shown here, we can detect when the numbers are equal to each other. All right, now there's another way we could do that. So let's go back and let's change the code up a little bit. And you've learned from previous examples that we can replace the greater than with a greater than or equal, and we'd have to do that everywhere. Okay, we have to do that for all of these greater than signs if we want to change the nested if solution for this. Okay, so we'd have to do it that way. And we'd have to do the same thing for the other cases. We just need to replace the greater than or equal to signs in here we'd have to play, or I'm sorry, we do have to replace the greater than with greater than or equal. And if you did that, then we'd be able to detect that we had a number, and if they're equal to each other, we print out that number. Now, the thing here, the statement that we're printing might not be exactly what we want. In this case, we might want to change it to it is the largest or it's equal to. But at any rate, you can modify these earlier cases by going to a greater than or equal sign, and you can catch the equal numbers that way as well. All right, so let's run this last case and look at that output. And let's see what kind of solution we get on the screen. So I'll bring this over and let's put in our numbers again. So I'm going to use 6 and 6 and 6 to make them all equal. And in this case, you can see in case number 1, we did print out that 6 is the largest number. So we did detect the case when they were equal, although we might want to change the message that we write out here. So in case number 1, again, looking at that, by going to a greater than or equal, we do get an output. And an output is better than no output. Previously, we didn't get anything if the numbers were equal. And the same thing is true for case number 2. Just make those changes from greater than to greater than or equal, and that works as well. Now, I didn't do the same thing for case 3 or case 4. And case 5, it still finds out when the numbers are equal. So there's a couple of ways you can go about it. Then if you were writing a program and someone said, hey, write a program that will find the largest of 3 numbers, then you wouldn't do it 5 times the way I've shown you here. You try to come up with a way that makes the most sense. And if you want to be able to make a nice output when the numbers are equal, then you might want to go with case number 5. Okay, so that might be the cleanest solution that we have. One of the main points so far is the use of this AND operator. So remember that when you have the AND, then both sides of your both sides of the AND have to be expressions that result in true. Okay, so anything else will give you a false result. All right. Now, didn't show you anything about the OR statement. So I'm going to do another example before I leave here, and it isn't the same thing as finding the largest of 3. I'm going to go back and do one of the problems we did earlier where we find the day of the week given a number 1 through 7. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of a different way to write that. So let's go do that now. So let's start with a comment so that we know what's up. We're going to do the class time example. And, you know, I called it the class time example. It's really the day of the week example here. So let's change that. Okay, the day of week. Okay, so that's what we called it earlier. So let's continue to do that. But as we go through this problem, we're going to be able to pick out the days of the week that we have class on. So that'll be a new addition. So since this is the same code that I did in a previous video, then I'm just going to go ahead and copy from my notes and paste that in, and we'll put our if statement here. So let's back up, again, being careful about the indentations. So we saw from a previous video that we can input a day in terms of a number 1 through 7, where 1 represents Sunday and 7 Saturday. Then we can have a sequence of if statements to check the number and print out the name of that day. So here is what we did for that. We just have a series of if statements. If days equal to 1, we print Sunday. Else if days 2, we print Monday, and so on. Don't forget the double equal signs. We also had a clause, an else clause here, so that if we happen to type in a number that was not 1 through 7, we get an error message. Okay, so we have to type in a number that's correct, or we get this error message. So it's called error checking. Now let's extend this a little bit. Let's see if we can detect the days of the week where we have class days, and let's write an if statement for that. I'm going to copy and again put the little message here. Here's our comment. Okay, test for class days. So what I want to do is this. Let's suppose our classes meet on Monday and Wednesday. So that means day is 2 or day is equal to 4. Now, we could enhance this else if statement so that we would print out Monday, and then we could print out we have class today. And, the same thing for Wednesday. I could add that in as part of the else if clause right there. But I wanted to also show you how to do it using the or statement because, after all, that's part of this example. So we can write a statement like this. Okay, we can do our if statement like this, and we could use an or clause. So in the same way we do an and, we have to have a complete, syntactically correct logical expression, relational expression on both sides of this logical operator, or. All right, so if the day is equal to 2, or if the day is equal to 4. So this is different than the and. With the and, both of these had to be true in order for the entire expression to be true. But as you can logically see, if one or the other is true, then the whole thing's true. So the only way this can be false is if both sides are false. Okay, remember that. The only way that expression can be false is if the day is 1 or the day is 5, something such that both of these expressions evaluate to false. If one is true, or if the other one is true, or if both of them are true, then the whole thing is true. So given that, then let's just print out that we have class today if that happens. So if the day is equal to 2 or the day is equal to 4, then we'll print out CS100 meets today. And if it is any other day, we don't print that out at all. So here is an illustration then of our logical or statement. So let's run the program and show that this works. So I'll compile. I don't compile. I keep saying compile because I teach C++ also. But Python is an interpreted language. We don't compile interpreted languages, so we just run it. Now we bring over the output, and we'll go through all those if tests for the 3 numbers. So I'm going to do 7 and 6 and 4. Okay, so then we have all those test cases. Then we're down here, okay, the day of the week. So let's enter a day of the week where we have class. That will be 2. So we hit enter, and we print out Monday from this else if up here, and then we print out CS100 meets today because this last if statement, we have the day was equal to 2. And now we can't have both. Day can only be one thing. So if we had put in 4, then this side would be true, and we print out class meets today. So that's how the or statement works. I'm not going to talk about the not statement just yet. We'll do that in an upcoming video. But this shows you the examples of the and of the or. Okay, the not operation, that just negates something. So if you have something that's true, then you can put not in front of it, and you can have if not true. Okay, if not A greater than B, for example. But we'll see an example of that coming up. Okay, this completes the example of how to find the largest of 3 numbers using the relational operators and the logical operators. So we'll stop the video here.